It's no secret that Winston Churchill was a legendary dude. Not only did he help defeat Nazi Germany during World War II, but he also had a pretty good sense of humor and wasn't afraid to speak his mind. However, sometimes being fearless could get you into a bit of trouble, which is exactly what happened to Churchill during one of his trips to New York City. What happened to him there? Well, let me tell you. In 1931, Winston Churchill was in New York City because he was about to address the newly formed American-British War Veterans Committee. And since his hotel was close to the location of the event, he decided to cross the street and walk over instead of taking a car. When he got to the sidewalk, he looked left and then right and saw no cars coming. So he started to cross the street. But before he could make it to the other side, a yellow taxi cab that was driving on the right side of the road came barreling towards him. And even though the driver slammed on his brakes and honked the horn, it wasn't enough. The next thing Winston Churchill knew, he was flying through the air. And when he landed, his glasses were broken, his suit was torn, and he had a big gash on his leg. The driver of the car quickly jumped out to see if Mr. Churchill was okay. And when he realized how badly he had hurt the former British leader, he fainted dead away. Meanwhile, the crowd started to grow angry and began yelling at the driver. But this wasn't his fault. After all, they drive on the right side of the road here in America, not the left side like they do in Britain. So how could he have possibly known that Winston Churchill would be crossing the street where he wasn't supposed to? Soon after this, a police officer arrived and asked the driver what had happened. He explained everything to the cop, but when the officer heard that Mr. Churchill had crossed the street in the middle of the block, he just shook his head and said, "That's your fault, mister. You should have yielded to the pedestrian." The driver tried to explain that he couldn't see Mr. Churchill because there were parked cars on the corner, but the officer didn't care. He arrested the guy right then and there and took him down to the station house. As for Winston Churchill, he was taken back to his hotel in a police car so that he could clean up his wounds. And although he was sore and bruised and missing a pair of glasses, he was still in good spirits. He told the press that it was all his own fault and that he shouldn't have been out strolling around in the first place. However, he also made it clear that he wasn't blaming the driver. Instead, he blamed the New World, saying that Americans drive on the wrong side of the road. This caused quite a stir in the press, and soon people were wondering if Winston Churchill was actually blaming America for the accident. Some thought he was just trying to take the blame off himself, while others thought he really was mad at Americans for driving on the right side of the road. Whatever the case may be, this didn't stop Churchill from going out again the very next night. In fact, he went out to dinner with some friends, and afterward, he went to a jazz club to listen to some music. Perhaps he was feeling a little reckless because earlier that week, he had taken a ride in a Ford with a reporter and had almost crashed into a tree. When this happened, he simply laughed it off and said, "I shall never drive one of these accursed contraptions again." And maybe he was keeping his promise by staying away from the wheel. Or maybe he just didn't know how to properly cross the street in America. Either way, he ended up getting hit by another car and sent flying through the air once more. This time he was hit by a sedan while he was walking near Columbus Circle. And although he wasn't seriously injured, this must have shaken him up a bit because he stopped going out alone after this. Instead, he had someone drive him around wherever he needed to go, so that he wouldn't have to worry about crossing the street and getting hit by a car again. And apparently this worked because he never got into another accident in America. Now, you might be wondering why Churchill didn't just pay more attention when he was crossing the street. After all, he was a former army officer and had served in many wars, so he probably had some combat training. But here's the thing. When you live in a country that drives on one side of the road, you learn to cross the street without really thinking about it. And since Britain drives on the left side of the road, it was second nature for Churchill to look left before he crossed the street. Unfortunately, he didn't realize that in America, they drive on the other side of the road and don't look left when crossing the street. Otherwise, he might have seen the car coming and been able to avoid getting hit. Of course, the driver should have been paying better attention as well. After all, cars are supposed to yield to pedestrians. And if he had been paying attention, he might have seen Churchill looking at the cars on the left side of the road and realized that he wasn't paying attention to the traffic on his side. But these two weren't the only ones to blame. There was also the city of New York. They hadn't yet put up signs telling pedestrians which side of the road they should be crossing on. And since they were expecting a huge influx of people for the upcoming 1933 World's Fair, they didn't have enough traffic cops to direct pedestrians and vehicles. This meant that everyone was just kind of doing their own thing, and no one was looking out for anyone else. If the city had been better prepared for the large crowds, perhaps they would have had enough traffic cops to make sure everyone was following the rules of the road. And if they had put up signs telling people which side of the street to cross on, then Winston Churchill might have seen them and realized that he needed to look right instead of left. Or maybe he would have just ignored the sign and done what he had always done, which was look to his left. After all, it's hard to change your habits, especially when you're in a foreign country and not used to the way things are done. So what could have prevented this accident? Well, for one, Churchill could have taken a taxi instead of crossing the street. Second, the driver could have been paying better attention to his surroundings. And third, the city of New York could have been better prepared for the large crowds. All of these things combined led to this unfortunate accident, but it didn't stop Winston Churchill from being the legendary man that he was. After the first accident, he could have easily blamed the driver or the city and called it a day. But instead, he took responsibility for his actions and made light of the situation. He even joked about it in his speech to the American-British War Veterans Committee, saying that the only thing he was bringing back from America was a pair of trousers that were 2 inches shorter than his British ones. This showed that he was a man who could laugh at himself and move on from his mistakes, which is a quality that we could all use a little more of in our lives. So what can we learn from Winston Churchill's misadventures in New York? Well, first of all, if you're ever in a foreign country, be sure to pay attention to your surroundings. Just because you know how to cross the street in your home country doesn't mean you know how to do it in a foreign country. Second, no matter what happens, keep your cool. Getting angry or upset won't solve anything. It's best to just relax and go with the flow. And third, always take responsibility for your actions. It's easy to blame someone else when something bad happens, but it's better to own up to your mistakes and learn from them. So next time you're in New York City, be sure to keep these tips in mind. And remember to look both ways before you cross the street, because you never know when a yellow taxi might be barreling towards you. Now it's time to hear from you. What do you think? Let me know in the comments section below. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you learned something new. Now go out, explore the world, and make some memories.